United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So,
Andrew, second.
Support.
Barb, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Recognition of visitors.
Dana Liddell.
Well, first of all, I saw that AI was on the agenda, so brought a audible thing. See if I can get the volume up here high enough for everybody to hear it. So, actually, I'm gonna step over it. This is the ChatGPT app, just so you're in the loop, and I'm just asking a simple question to illustrate the broader point. How many R's are in the word raspberry? I don't know if you could hear me. It said there's 2 R's in the word raspberry. If I was to continue engaging with it, it would go back and dig in on its point that there's only 2 R's. My broader point with that is that AI, in certain contexts, is not reliable. Additionally, I can't share details here, but I'm connected to some top-tier companies in the AI space. And privacy issues, safety aspects are being overlooked, whether intentionally or not, and they are deeply concerning. While AI is all the rage right now, seeming fun and profitable, driven by buzz from companies like OpenAI and ChatGPT. It's important to remember that Sam Altman, OpenAI's co-founder, has never run a profitable company. This hype doesn't equate to readiness for our classrooms. Public schools like HPS should exercise extreme caution. We're dealing with something we don't fully understand. Stay aware of trends, but move slowly, evaluating multiple data points before any adoption. A recent MIT Media Lab study on ChatGPT showed that regular AI reliance for tasks like essay writing led to cognitive debt, where participants scored worse, produced lower quality outputs, and experienced reduced brain activity and connectivity, even after stopping AI use. AI shortcuts the brain's natural learning process. True understanding comes from effortful processing and building connections. While it might be a tool in controlled contexts, students shouldn't be exposed before a certain age, and even then, only with tight parameters. Beyond cognition, there are emotional risks. AI could heighten stress, anxiety, and isolation, fostering false attachments, where kids confide in machines over human connections, eroding empathy and resilience. Privacy issues abound too, with vast data collection risking long-term storage and third-party sharing enabling subtle surveillance. AI in public schools is too dangerous right now. HPS should avoid it and lead by focusing on tried and true learning methods that prioritize real growth.
Thank you, David. Okay, and next we have the AI committee update.
Just one minute. Where do you plan to have one roll up?
So
from
you got
over
it
here?
here? We can
Yeah,
go
roll
over
up
here?
from here.
Sure.
That's great.
Yep. Should we just launch right into it? Sounds great. Okay, yeah, that's a great segue. Craig Steenstra, the Instructional Technology Director, and I'm here with
Josh Muersma, principal at Bauer Elementary.
who I believe you've all known and met before. So we wanted to share an update on where we are with our approach to AI and what our plans are for moving forward. So going back to our SOAR 4 goals from several years ago, one of them around the instructional technology vision was threefold: to enhance teaching and learning, build our students' digital skills, prepare them for the world, and improve efficiencies in general. And part of that plan was try to make that flexible to adapt with changing technologies so that as those new technologies come along, we can still maintain that vision and make it work for whatever comes along. So I feel like AI is a great example of that. As Mr. Rodell pointed out, we've been very intentional about being cautious, thoughtful, judicious as we've thought about how we want to utilize this with our staff and especially with our students. So over the past 2 years, and has the Appleseed come out yet? I don't think so.
Not yet.
So you're getting a preview for that. If you're reading that and be like, I already heard all this, it'll be because I'm sharing the same stuff probably. So our focus has been on building staff capacity the last 2 years. So we've been embedded into different training with our collaborative team structure and at different times throughout our professional development periods. We've tried to show teachers how they can utilize it for things like lesson enhancement, standards alignment, differentiation. These are all things that we've been focusing on for a long time and that we found the AI tools to be fairly effective at. If nothing else, being a thought partner and or generating things that, it's hard to come up with at 9 p.m. on a Thursday night when you're, spent. So over that time, we've evaluated different platforms and tools, trying to keep an eye on privacy, accuracy, reliability, all of those things that are concerns. So that's involved working with companies, trying to pilot different tools, and eventually we've determined the ones that we feel are safest, that we have assurances from the companies that privacy and data is not being shared, and ones that we have found effective for our needs. And that's been a process of working with people at all levels, from principals to, I wouldn't say custodians, but certainly teacher aides and parapros. So we felt pretty good about that process, and it's a continuous growth, right? Making progress. And this year, we're jumping into the realm of student use, and this is something that we've been extra cautious about for all the reasons stated before. And just a couple weeks ago, we opened Gemini and Notebook LM, which are Google tools that we have under our domain and our oversight, that have educational guarantees of student privacy, and we have greater ability to monitor and track what students are doing with these things. Our main rationale for that is that AI is a reality. A large portion of jobs that you see now are calling for AI skills, or at least familiarity. And if it's our job to develop students and prepare them for the world that they're going to be going into, even at higher ed, it would be doing them a disservice if we did not give them opportunities to learn how to use it effectively, responsibly, and honestly. So those are the areas that we're trying to achieve, or work towards. So starting with juniors and seniors, we feel like that's a safer and smaller group to start with, and this was a decision made through a lot of conversation with teachers like department chairs, principals, people who are going to be involved with enforcing these and monitoring these things, because there's some trepidation about that for good reason. So far in 2 weeks, there hasn't been any cause that I'm aware of, or any cases that have caused any greater concern than what we've experienced previously. Because prior to this, they were use it on their phones, right? Just because we don't allow it on their Chromebooks doesn't mean they can't draw it up on any other device. So that again is, another reason why we want to provide some guidance and try to adapt to that as we're moving forward. And then Josh has some things that he wants to share in ways that he's been using.
So just a couple of examples of how it benefits, just many ways at work. When we came back from the holiday vacation, our SOAR acronym for PBIS initiative, we made some videos using AI to reteach lessons in the common areas at our school: cafeteria, hallways, classroom, playground. And one of the things that I'm learning to be stronger at is part of the quality of AI is the tool you use, and then how you deliver, how you craft your prompts. So drilling down into those prompts and making them concise and clear to what you're trying to accomplish will yield a better result on the So we launched these videos, kids enjoyed them, they were great entry points for teachers to continue conversations around behaviors in different areas. And then, as a professional example for myself, one of the things that I had consumed over break was about process goals versus outcome or performance goals. And process goals being, we're going to engage in a process that over time will likely yield positive results versus I'm going to lose 20 pounds as an outcome. And the comparison between those psychologically and long-term, how efficacious those are. So I was trying to synthesize all of this for a staff meeting relative to our building goal for our elementary around math. And so I asked AI to help build me, for a layperson, some of the research and how to best deliver it to my audience. And then once you begin, then you refine and tweak until you get it the way that you'd like it. So there's a large amount of ownership that I feel I have over it. I don't feel as though I'm cheating somebody or stealing, but it does accelerate the process of creation when it comes to things like that, and produced a really good result. Had a great discussion with my staff, and there's just countless ways that it can be deployed by teachers, myself, other staff in the building, but those are just a couple of examples of how I've used it recently.
You saw the staff that did a presentation on it several weeks ago, and it's nice to see the staff, and then getting to Craig's point of what's next for our kids if you're preparing them. We're not looking at all the fourth graders having open access to all this, but what does this look like for juniors and seniors to use it responsibly? Working the staff so that you have the right prompts, that you don't have, because clearly students have access to things, even if it's not in the building. Most of our kids have cell phones. Even if it's not in the building, they have cell phones, whether they're home at night doing homework and so forth. And how does it impact them?
And just to follow up on some of Josh's points, our tagline with students is this is designed to enhance your knowledge and skills and your talents, not replace them. So that's something we want to be conscientious about, making sure that we're building those foundational skills, that they're not overly reliant on it, but still using it and being like a critical thought partner and having it be able to help them, enhance them, improve them, not take over our world.
I'm really thankful for Craig's leadership and the other administrators on that SOAR committee. I think that they've been very thoughtful about the process and really thinking through some of the big ideas of just, academic integrity. How do we use this tool in providing that guidance to teachers to even be very clear with students about what they expect, whether AI is used on this project or not used on this project. And I think my own personal children are in college and their professors are doing that well. And so we believe that it's important that we prepare our students for that real world and be really thinking about that academic integrity and not taking away from their knowledge and skill. We still want to hold that with high regard. However, we know this tool is accessible, and so how do we frame it for teachers as well as then coming alongside students and navigating the use of the tool. So super thankful for the leadership of Craig and the other administrators on that team, because it's tricky to balance all of that, but bottom line is we want to prepare our students for what's next, and control some of that narrative around safe ways to use it, appropriate ways to use it, and not use it.
So talk to me a little bit about the privacy piece. I'm trying to wrap my mind around what sort of things would be a problem. Is it something different than having your history shown as far as what you asked it, or what other sort of privacy type things do we need to be concerned about or looking at?
Yeah, some of the big concerns that are expressed are student data, like names, any like accommodations or disabilities they might have that get shared back to the companies that are providing these platforms. So that's why we, with our Google accounts and licenses, have the education version, and that data, whatever is done within Gemini or Notebook LM, does not get shared back to the
Open source.
company.
So like ChatGPT, if you put in all of your kids in a class in ChatGPT and say, organize these kids in groups by whatever, that's open source.
Okay.
Where if you do it just internally, then it's
So it's more the information you're putting in to get something back that could be the potential privacy issue. Okay.
Yeah, and we still encourage teachers to not use personally identifiable information just as a precaution and, like a habit, so.
Have we had any situations where someone hasn't adhered to those, or, whether, by mistake or, not purposely, but?
Yeah, with staff in particular, not that I'm aware of, I haven't heard of any. There certainly have been cases where students have used AI dishonestly prior to us opening up these tools, but I'm not aware of any staff.
What does the training or what do the resources look like for students? Is it covered in a certain class or a certain time of day? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's still, I guess, in process, but initially, Jordan Beal and I created an intro video that was shown to all high school students, that day that we opened those platforms, and it covered all of those main pillars of AI potential and concern. Watch out for hallucinations, it's not the most reliable, use it honestly, and.
Did I share that with the board? I think I shared that last week.
We didn't look at it.
We were-
Like I said, that video.
None of us were paying attention.
You guys don't read my emails.
But you can watch it and get a sense of that. We have a student guide doc that's posted on our links page that reiterates some of those main points and provides some help with things like prompting. Like Josh said, the quality of your prompt has a big impact on the quality of the results. So that's one of the things that we're trying to develop in those students and really have teachers integrate into their classes. That's the ideal scenario, because they're not going to learn what we want them to learn in a 7-minute seminar video. They'll learn it through regular exposure and practice, and that's a big challenge for teachers, is adapting what they've done to this, and that's part of what we want to help support them on and integrate into our training. So we're meeting with collaborative teams. Hey, what are we doing about this? We can problem solve. This is working for me. Here's some ideas for you to consider. There's tools that actually can help you modify your tasks to make it AI resistant, not AI proof. But that's just one of the ways that we hope to continue making that adjustment.
I remember Doug was sending some.
9th of January.
Okay.
It was in board briefs, not last Friday, the
Oh,
Friday.
so a link in board briefs maybe.
It was in board briefs, it summarized everything we talked about with the pilot, and their video was linked in there.
Okay.
That Jordan
So
did.
click on
I
the
remember
link,
seeing, I
that's
don't
all.
remember seeing how it was being, like, if there was a certain.
So yes, we read your
Additional
board
training,
briefs, but we
yes.
don't always click on the link.
Yeah.
You're not missing out.
And that way
It's
you
not
can
gonna win
use it
any
yourself,
grant.
right?
You know those links are
You know, it might have been one that I
Yeah,
did.
exactly.
Robin, you were here on the 9th of January, right?
Yeah, I think so, I can look it up.
Okay. No, I thought maybe that's what it was.
So my impression is, this committee is a little bit like the DAC in the sense that we're getting in, we don't exactly know what the outcome's gonna be yet, but we're getting in, we're learning, we're growing, we're figuring out, we're trying to know what we don't know right now, right? And then implementing things, maybe a little different than DAC, and then we're implementing things along the way because it's here now. I mean, you're right, I mean, we can't put our heads in the sand, kids are gonna use it, teachers are gonna use it, or it's gonna use it. But is that accurate? I mean, we're not working toward or maybe we have a specific outcome right now identified. It's like, we're learning as we go, and we're rolling things out as we learn, and we'll formulate approaches and information and curriculum maybe, maybe not, as we go. Is that a fair assessment?
There's been conversations, there are districts who are implementing courses where AI is a strong component of that course, teaching them, all the academic integrity, you can say all of the values maybe that we would hold around that or beliefs, but, so I don't know. I think that there are components of wanting to prepare kids for the real world.
Yeah.
And that's really the heart of a lot of the work that Craig has been leading alongside teachers and getting their perspectives on all of those components and administrators. And so this is an administrative team, but they're always connecting with teachers to say, what about this, what about that? As part of our strategic plan. Yeah, sorry.
How easy is it to tell that students use AI?
Not always easy.
Okay.
Well, we
We do have an English.
I know, I'm very curious.
I would say-
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
a lot of what our conversations come down to is how well you know the student and their abilities and trying to capture that. And, like the English department especially has evolved their practices to try to make it easier to monitor. So that's part of the adaptation that goes along with it.
And that's a complexity, I mean, that's a complexity of writing a 10-page paper may not mean the same thing that it used to, right? Measuring knowledge and skill in the area of writing, for example, it may need to start to look different for some of these realities that we are faced with, and that's a shift and a change and a challenge, so.
And
That
when
we're
you're
trying to stay ahead of, I guess.
Yeah.
No, that's not, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
thinking about like a research paper, and we always were taught that you always wanted to have at least 2 documented valid sources. So if you use AI to help you with that research, how do you know that's really considered to be a valid source?
Right, so that's one of the skills and habits we're trying to foster is the cross-referencing. So I look at it as like, next level research. So you always wanna cross-reference your sources no matter what. I think it's especially important now with AI. If you're just reading whatever the AI source provides you, then that's like taking it off Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Maybe, I'm trying to think of a good
Facebook.
analogy.
Yeah.
But can't totally be reliable,
Right.
right? So cross-reference, find other sources, and learn how to cite when you are using an AI tool. That's one of the things that we have resources on as well. So I use this for this manner, this was my prompt, and if possible, here was the result. So that's something that teachers can ask for and expect and evaluate as well.
Okay, good.
This is gonna be, if this board meeting is like archived somewhere 20 years from now, it'd be so interesting to come back and like.
That's exactly what I'm
What are they
thinking.
talking
Like,
about,
what-
man?
you know, but it did the same thing with calculators.
I know.
Yeah.
Right, you're gonna learn how to use calculators.
Yeah.
It's just interesting, but I think it is important to think about, like, how do we do this in a way that's super productive and well managed, right? So that our kids are being trained how to use things with integrity and honesty and also prepare for the future, right? So thank you for all the great work. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, I like what I'm hearing, I'm just trying to go through our policies and all that, and I just wonder what type of oversight or role does the board have moving forward on this? It doesn't really fall under curriculum necessarily or cost, but just wanna get a grasp on, where does this fit? So it relates to
There is
us.
policy.
Yeah, I know, I've got it right here, and
Yep.
I'm sure it will evolve and change
Yeah.
over time.
Yeah, it's probably like a,
But there's nothing really that we're signing, we're not approving anything.
no, we're not looking at, right now, it could come to a point, there could be a couple lessons that we're looking at bringing in, but a lot of those, depending on the lessons, is more of a, not really curriculum, more than just information for the kids. I think as it evolves over time, I think that's important to see where it does. It's very similar to the cell phone conversation that we are going to have.
Yeah.
Regarding policy in the next couple months, it's the same conversation probably.
Yep.
Cause there might be something like this legislative that comes down next. We just
So,
don't know.
yeah, no, I do, I'm not saying that I want to insert ourselves right now, so I appreciate the thoroughness that you're going through, just, always trying to think ahead, as this grows out.
It is happening quickly.
Yeah.
It really is.
Any other questions or discussion?
This would be a good one to touch in the future. I don't know if it's a quarter or 6 months, but this would be another good one to get done.
Should very well be
Because it's
something leading into the school year even
Yeah.
next year.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do it by hologram.
Use the one
Right.
other
Thank you.
Are you real?
Real.
That's the big reveal.
Next, we've got the Hudsonville Education Foundation policy.
Yeah, I'll be quick on this, and Joey can jump in, I think, at any point regarding the foundation. So, with the Hudsonville Education Foundation, the Michigan Education Foundation recommends that there is a MOU, a memorandum of understanding between the local board and the HEF board, about what the roles are. So they're looking at this as a memorandum of understanding. This is something that we would ask to have signed by the Hudsonville Board of Education, as well as the Hudsonville Education Foundation. There's nothing elaborate in here other than, this is what we do, we should put it in document. I think, Lacey Dixon, when she came on as the executive director of the foundation, has just taken the foundation to a different level from a structural standpoint. It's been very helpful to kind of really have it cleaned up, so you can look through it. We went through it a couple times, and I said, I have to ask our board to review it in a work session before we ask, to approve it in a consent agenda item next month. After that, then can be signed, I think it's signed by the president, I should
And the secretary.
Yeah, president, secretary. Yeah.
And this is something that followed a script from the
It's,
state?
besides the Hudsonville versus the
Okay.
Michigan, they've asked, that's what they, very similar to what you'll see in Rockford, East Grand
Okay.
Rapids, some of the other foundations, and it comes right out of the Michigan Education Foundation.
Okay.
So it's nothing special, there shouldn't be any, we did have our attorney look at it to say, is there anything special? I think we had to go through, we had a couple of suggestions for some language tweaks, but just to be consistent within it, so, pretty straightforward.
Do we call it the Hudsonville Education Foundation or Educational Foundation?
Hudsonville I don't know.
Education.
Education.
It says on here, the last
Oh,
page
yeah,
says
it's-
educational foundation.
Anyway,
On the front.
Maybe
page,
that's,
too.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's educational, I think it's education.
that's what I thought too, right? That's just.
That's a great
Consistent.
yeah, I know.
Also under section, I was gonna ask you the why behind it, so you explain that, but under the foundation will, that section, number 9, how'd you get there?
Where am I? Oh.
See?
Section, yeah, see, I think, it says the superintendent will,
Foundation will?
Fundraising activities.
Foundation on a regular basis, and keep the foundation board, number 9. The superintendent will meet with foundation representatives on a regular basis and keep the foundation board and relevant committees apprising of the district fundraising activity. Okay, okay, my first thought was, should I say district board, but now I see now I get it.
That's our, interschool advisory that some of you had
Yeah.
attended, that's really comes in, what other fundraising is taking place, and that's our update to the foundation, so they're aware, if they're gonna do, if the foundation's gonna do a fundraising thing, or are they doing it at the same time, there's a walkathon, and they're doing another district walkathon.
I think grammatically that word appraising is not correct.
Yeah, I would
It should
agree.
be appraised. That's just me.
I agree with you.
I agree with you.
Did you say Pat looked at this too, Doug? Pat, and
Pat had
from a
our-
financial perspective, as far as tax status and all that, none of this really matters.
Yeah, they work with their, specific purpose. We've tried to use them before to, like it was a donation that didn't really fit our purpose, that was for a specific purpose, that like, here's cash for, you know, we couldn't do that, and then they, couldn't do it either, so they're aware, they've got their antenna up for violations of their exempt purpose.
Okay.
So they have to watch it, we have to watch it too, if a donor would give us funds that wouldn't meet, our exempt purpose, so I think they do, if that helps.
Yeah.
They keep they stay aware of what they can do and what they can't do.
Okay.
Yeah. Which gets tricky
Yeah, for sure.
with donor funds.
Yeah.
I think when this started years ago, it was several parents that wanted to help out and take care of things that maybe the district can't afford to do, special initiatives, and now we're really trying to streamline it, get to a sustainable, so no matter who's on either board, it's still sustainable.
And then, last question, on the last page, number 6, about, meeting quarterly to give each other an update on major donors and share annually the names of all non-anonymous donors giving in excess of $25,000. Is that a particular tax purpose as well, is that more just information sharing?
Well, we talked about that with the attorney, and, that's modified language,
questions, discussion? Okay, then, Dr. Jack, that will be at our next meeting, where we'll be,
Yeah, so I'll make a couple of the modifications. I found educational in there 1, 2, 3 times, but I'm gonna go through it again. Not with AI, I can search educational and find out. I was thinking that, though.
Control F.
No, Control F. Control F. I can find it that
Still
way.
works? Sorry.
It does work, it does work. And then, yes, I'll ask the board to approve it at that point next meeting, in February.
okay. Okay, we will next go on to the microscope purchase recommendation.
Take that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, earlier this fall, the high schools started working on upgrading their microscopes for these for the biology and anatomy classes, and they, the teachers started looking for quotes. It was amazing to them and me how difficult it was to find good equipment. They're very limited suppliers, and they basically they were working a lot more than it was worth. So I had a couple people that work in the district that are really good at using consortium pricing to go out and find other quotes. We've done that before, and they had struggles themselves. So to find compatible equipment, we did find 3 quotes through this huge national collaborative called Omnia Partners. And the problem with the prices, the quotes that came back is, well, for example, 2 of them couldn't guarantee a delivery date of a camera that goes within the microscope. Magnification device / camera. So the 2 quotes they did secure are Microscope World and iMiller, and I found benefit in that consortium pricing because I couldn't tell you, frankly, and no one else in our office could tell you what a fair price was for this kind of microscope, because we haven't bought them in 3 decades. So, yeah, so at least we did get that comfort, and that meets the purchasing policy that we've solicited quotes. And the recommendation is to go forward with purchasing 32 from Microscope World. It's bond eligible purchase, and 16 per class. They share a microscope. 2 kids share a microscope.
When I learned that they're using the same microscopes that I use, they weren't that great back then.
Yeah.
So, thank you for the good work.
Well, Mr. Rotier and Mr. Bolheis say these are great microscopes.
Good. That's great.
And I would trust them before I would trust
Right.
the accountant. I take their word on it. Thanks.
Anybody have any questions? So then that'll be brought up at the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay, next we'll go to cybersecurity software recommendation.
Yes, as an aside, the statewide business conference was last week, and they had 2 sessions on cyber hacking, that is the cyber attacks that are going on right now. And what it really comes down to is 5 years ago, the hackers were using brute force to just overwhelm firewalls and do things like that. And they found that they can work 1/10 as hard and do a little social engineering and get us to click on a link. It's so much easier, and they get so much more money, and they can get in your network and do so much more damage. So Jeff, our technology director, has been working with groups across the state. MAISA is one of them, and they have funding from the state funding from the legislature, and they went out and found an incredible price on this Falcon product. It's it's listed, they got a lot better price than Falcon lists on the MI deal, the state contract, which was a great price in the first place, a lot cheaper than I could get it, you know, if I went and bought this kind off the shelf. So, really, what Jeff has secured here, and it's grant funded, is, $54 for 17 months of coverage, and $33 for 17 months of coverage on another set of max. The issue being, what I asked Jeff is like, what are we gonna do when the 17 months runs out? And he said, we're either gonna have to pivot, find another grant, general fund it, but the attack is happening at the individual level. And it's, you know, with this many machines, this many things going on every day, it's easy. They send these little emails to trick us, and it's amazing how many of us, they're gracious, they don't out us publicly, but we do occasionally make a mistake and click on one of these. They send them out, they try to get us.
Just so you know, the links and board briefs, the things I ask you to click on are safe to click on.
As long as it's from your email address, not.
That's why I don't.
Yeah, you just get rid
So yes, to summarize, this is our recommendation, so it's free to us for 17 months, and it provides additional, far greater coverage than we have now. So,
How often do we have a problem? On a weekly basis, on a daily basis?
we have enough problems, I'd say it comes up, that Jeff makes me aware of. He works a lot more with Ann, he might make her at least once a month. At least once a month, and they're pretty quick at correcting it, and a lot of times it's just an auto forward internal. But, yeah, when, 5 years ago, we had, before they were forwarding to us, Pat wants to make this deduction to this account. Those were coming in all the time. So our insurance company just recommended that we make somebody carry in a hand-signed document if they wanna have a payroll deduction. We've done a lot of things, and, I mean, the HR and business office, we make a lot of people, waste a lot of gas driving over here with paper forms, but we've actually, I think the largest loss we've had is, well, we've had a couple losses, and we were able to, our bank was able to recover it, because we followed their procedures. But, yeah, the bad guys are pretty creative.
Well, after getting my 22 million from Nigeria, I don't need any more money, so I'm not even tempted to click on it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And these are not for student computers, it's for, this is the,
Well, we're getting, it's all Chromebook devices.
oh, okay.
So there are some of the Macs the students do use,
Alright.
but we don't have them on their Chromebooks.
Oh, okay, got it.
There are students that use iPads, just other devices.
Yeah, you said that, I missed that. What prompted us to go after this grant again?
Well, it's just an effort, Jeff, we're constantly hearing that we're under attack.
Right.
And we have, like, it's not, our neighbors have been hit. Local governments, local schools.
Yeah, that's, my question really is, Mr. Chester, how do we hear, I'm not questioning this, I'm
Yeah.
just trying to think about this. How do we hear that we're under attack?
Well, our tech department, they know because they see the, hacking, phishing emails. We specifically, I forward one every 2 weeks to Jeff. He's like, why don't you just delete those, it's an attack. You know enough, so people, we try to have people not forward them to us, to send them to Jeff.
Yeah.
Say, hey, don't click on this, is this one, this is bad one, he's like, yeah, why'd you even forward it, delete it.
Really, where I'm going is, how do we, and there may not be an answer to this, but how do we know, or are there groups out there, consortiums or whatever, that are understanding the next thing, and the next thing isn't, right, because the hackers never stop, they just keep going and going and going. So is there ways things that we do to implement to try and keep us ahead?
Oh,
We
yeah.
and other entities around
We,
those public entities?
like, 8 years ago, we purchased, as far as the statewide insurance companies, we purchased the first Beasley policy for cyber breaches. And from the time we purchased that to last year, the questionnaire on what Jeff has to do in our policies that we, I mean, it's, the know before you go, I mean, there's a ton of things, we do PD for our staff, Jeff sends out, staff emails, get on his training.
So we work with companies and we work with other entities to say, okay, here's your latest training, here's this, again, to help us keep ahead.
Oh, yes.
As best we can.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, our tech department, it's part of that, it's part of our insurance.
Yeah.
But in order to keep the insurance, we have to do
We have to do those.
policies. When we get audited, they ask us what we have for cyber policies,
Yeah.
protections, what we do. The financial auditors ask us, the banks ask it, our insurance companies ask it. But there's a lot of people aware of the risk.
Okay, thank you.
I would just add too that the phishing emails have gotten so prevalent that within our help ticket, they've changed the way to even submit those, because otherwise they could spend all day like checking people's emails. And so the ISD actually, for the county, like a bunch of those phishing emails, you now send it through the site to the ISD, and then they're the ones that are saying, because, you know, our servers are hosted and there's all kinds of different, I mean, it affects everybody to make sure you're doing smart things. So, yeah, I think that's just like another layer to it as well, just how prevalent it is.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, next we're gonna go to the superintendent's goals, and I'll turn that over to Dr. Vanderjagt.
Thank you. This time of year, it's, the time to say, okay, what are some things you'd like me to kind of focus on for the year? We worked together on these, trying to come up with these. I drafted these, I did share them with Greg prior to the meeting, to take a look at what the thoughts were. There are plenty of other things that we also work on throughout the year that could develop or could come up, and we just don't know. So it's not like this is the only thing, but these are three main, I'll say, main areas of focus that I just want to spend just a brief minute here. The first one is sort of the bond development. We're gonna spend a lot of time talking about that tonight, but what does that look like for the year and calendar year? Because it really kind of taken a lot of time last year as well as this year, but really culminating at the end of this year, hopefully. The creation of our next strategic plan is a major initiative. Talk about that tonight also. That takes technically the entire calendar year to go through. And it's something that really always is, should be a goal and focus area, I think, for any superintendent's thought. Academics, instruction, assessment, and how students are doing. And a lot of that comes really from the conversation we just had about AI and what that looks like. That's a component of that goal also. Say kind of what do we need to continue to work on, whether it's another update in the fall, or what does it look like from a staffing standpoint, from a student standpoint, from a technology standpoint, resources, all of those different components. So I tried to lay them out to kind of give you more of a glimpse into what the thoughts are. You didn't have a chance to look over this, so I'm not asking you to say, oh, I've had all this time to process what these are. But any initial feedback is great, and then it'd be nice to kind of either clean these up at the next work session. Clearly, if you don't think these are goals that I should be working on, we're still going to do these things. So it's not like, okay, we're just gonna stop because you don't want it to be a goal. There's still a lot of other things a lot of other moving parts in the district, which you know. If you need me to, if there are other areas when we went over my evaluation, We talked about a lot of different components, and nothing stood out as an overarching goal or theme. I thought there's some areas to talk about. Last time, there were, and so those were worked into some goals, and I think, quite frankly, I think we're all in a different spot than we were a year or two ago in these conversations.
Does anyone have any questions about what you see in front of you? And obviously you just got it, so look at it over the next couple of weeks. If you have questions, what I would do is I would talk to Dr. Jack about that. If you have any other concerns or anything, just let me know. And if anyone has anything that they want to add, let me or Dr. Jack know that also. I think the last 2 years I went back and looked. I think I was the only one who asked about adding anything. No one else wanted. And I think this year, I think these are 3 goals that are sufficient, that are quite weighty, and are gonna be things that, in fact, if anything, codify what we're doing with the bond development so that, the next time that comes up, years from now, we can use that same kind of template to follow up on that. Anyone have any comments just initially from looking at?
That third bullet under goal 1, under timeline, is that also supposed to be winter, or is that spring, or something else?
Goal 1.
What's that? Oh, the third bullet, it says winter 2016 board review and decision on next steps, are we doing that this winter, or is that this?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So bullet 2 and 3 are for this winter.
Bullet 2 and 3 are right now.
Now.
Winter's clearly a long time of year.
But
yes, it's,
Before spring, in other words, sometime
Those are-
before spring.
Yeah.
Okay.
Based on looking outside, it could be winter for a while.
Right.
Yeah. Like right into summer, but.
Got it, sounds
Yeah.
good.
Not having, my actual computer in front of me, I don't recall the things that came up at all during the evaluation, but I don't know, Greg, if you had any, information on things that we maybe talked about at that point.
I don't recall having anything that we specifically came up with and asked for, whereas last year, there were several things that we asked for at the closed session that Dr. Jack addressed. And I will say that, and I said this to Dr. Jack about 6 weeks ago, that one of the goals that I wanted him to look at last year was, the board was struggling a little bit with maybe some of the different staff areas and stuff like that, and I specifically said to him that that was something that he could he could be very instrumental with that. And I told him, I said that I believe that he did that this year, even though it wasn't one of his goals, in working with the board and in working with me. And I think people see out there that there's not a whole lot of space between us like there was before. And that's, we also said that, hey, the next subject that comes up, there could be some space again. But even if there is, the relationship between the board and the superintendent is much better, and I expect that to continue. So.
Todd, I will say that 2 areas that we did talk about had to do with communication with staff regarding some of the academic component. That was in goal number 3 here, so that was kind of incorporated into the whole assessment. And again, we talked about inspecting what you expect type deal, so that was kind of incorporated there. And then the other component, which I think can be, I don't know if it would really be a goal, but just conversations that we've had, and I know Ann and I've had them also, regarding just continued administrative development for kind of succession planning.
Yeah,
So we talked about both of those.
Don't have my notes in front of me, but,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
I just
great.
pulled it up to look to see. Another one.
Okay, any other questions or concerns? Okay. The next thing we're gonna look at is the trip request.
So real quick, it's that time of year where our baseball, softball team think it's warmer in Florida, which it currently is, but hopefully will be in the spring also. So similar requests they've had before, their trips are a day apart, and they head down to Florida and come back tanner and better, I guess, I don't know. So it's the same request, but this is the process we follow going into work session, any questions you may have, and then we'll bring them on next agenda and the consent agenda.
Next one has to do with the code of conduct, and this one is, in early January, before we, read over and signed our code of conduct, Joy sent me and Dr. Vanderjack just email about how we could better, use better grammar maybe in the opening paragraph. So I thought, well, I'll just change this, but then I decided I'm just gonna bring it to the board. There's only 3 or 4 different changes, and I'm gonna read you you've got how the paragraph reads right now in front of you, and I'm gonna just read you what Joy suggested. The Hudsonville Board of Education members are deeply committed, and then she added the word "to," and passionate about the quality of education in the Hudsonville Public Schools. And then she also, in the next sentence, it says, she added, while serving the students, families, and communities of Hudsonville, the Board of Education recognizes the importance of embracing, adhering to, and committing to a standard instead of method, a standard of behavior, operations, and functioning of the board. And then the following statements define how each board member will govern. And it does not change any of the meaning of what's there, but I think it's a little bit better grammar-wise. So I'm just giving this to everybody here, and if there's no concerns about that, I'm just gonna ask Robin if she will just change that beginning paragraph.
Could I read it back to make sure I caught everything?
Yeah, I could just give you this.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll give you that right there. So does anybody have any questions or concerns about that at all?
Those are good, Joy, thank you.
Okay.
Those are good.
Okay, excellent. Okay, then we'll go on. What do we have next? We had the SOAR 6 planning.
Yeah, that's correct. So the SOAR 6 planning, we are in the final stretch of the SOAR 5, which is the last year of the 3-year plan. You've heard a lot of the goals have been, let's say, checked off. The ongoing ones we'll keep working on, and we'll have another update in summer, and then we'll finish it off at the end of the year. And some will lead into the next plan. So the next step is to go through a very similar process. There's a couple slight changes I'm gonna share with you tonight. I put it in your packet. I'm just gonna go through real briefly. You can take a look at that. There are really 3 phases of preparing a strategic plan. The way that Hudsonville does their strategic plan, number 1, we try to seek input from our community and find out what are some maybe emerging things out there that we as a maybe administrative team or board don't talk about that are still out there. And so are there things that we may be missing that we may get feedback from our community? So there's a series of focus groups that are set to take place. The first one is set for February 12 with some community leaders from clergy to businesses to other influential people in the area. Meet with them. Then there's the following week, there's a couple staff focus groups. One is after secondary dismissal, one is after elementary dismissal, so that they can pick one to go to, and if we have to add more, we can. And then there are 3 community focus groups that people are randomly selected through our technology department, and then they're asked if they'd like to participate, and then we fill them up. If we put 30 in there, we know hopefully 15 to 18 will show up. And that's really a good number. Up to 20 is a good number. If we get 30, we get 30, which is great. It's usually, we try to go within usually 75 to 90 minutes, and sometimes it lasts 2.5 hours. Just talking really about 3 main topics. What are things you've seen in education? What are the things you like about Hudsonville? What are the things are growth areas for Hudsonville? And you can imagine how they spiral into just a lot of follow-up conversations, which is great. We look for some main themes, and those themes then turn into items that we may be asking on a questionnaire. So that goes into phase 2. Phase 2 is when we have the questionnaire that goes out to all of our community. We also send it to our Golden Age participants so that they can hopefully give us some feedback. People can go online to our website and fill it out if they want to, if they don't have kids or don't have kids any longer in the district, or if they're not there yet, or either way, we ask them for their feedback and get input. And then we also survey our high school juniors and seniors. There's a little bit of a twist that I'll explain in just a second. And then we get input from our staff to look at 3 different complete surveys going from there. In the past, we've had Jeff Gardner with Gardner Associates help kind of bring that data together. He no longer is doing that work for various reasons, so we're gonna do it on our own, and that's where, going back to Craig and Josh's comment, that's gonna help some of that conversation. Technology is different than it was back then, so I don't need to try to do what I did with my dissertation and try to code everything and then look for salient points and then go to those themes and all that stuff. We have technology and we have various tools to use so that when we do, we don't have to use one source. We can use 2 to compare and say, are we getting the same results to see what's out there. And then you always review the data to say, is it kind of summarizing what you're asking to. So we'll do a lot of that work on our own and bring that data together. We do feel that the survey, we had a discussion with our cabinet today even about it, that having a lot of similar questions give us trend data, which is important, I think, for us to also, to not only look at areas to improve, but also areas to celebrate. It was brought up this morning that, there's a lot of things we've done for that last strategic plan that may come out in this trend data over the course of maybe 6, 9, or 12 years, and I think we should celebrate some of those successes going from there. So that survey goes out before the end of the school year, right after spring break, to get a lot of data, to say kind of where are we as the district to focus on. We'll take that information that goes into phase 3. That then phase 3, we take that information, we break up into 5 different groups with our administrative team. Once we solidify the board, the administrative retreat, we do ask if the board is available to come and sit in and on a group, and we assign you a group where you're like, I really want to be in this group, and a lot of you were a part of that before, and then you sit there and you can a lot of conversation takes place, a lot of brainstorming. We do want to try to keep it framed within the context of what is feasible and manageable to do, and what is really in the scope of what we're working on as a district also. So bringing that data together is in phase 3, and then we start to have the goals on what's going to be really some of our short-term goals, long-term goals, and ongoing goals. And quite often, short-term are things we want to work on right away. Long-term might be things that take maybe through the whole plan, or maybe even farther. It could be a 3 to 5 year objective. And then there are some ongoing goals that we'll just want to continue to work on. I think if you look at HR as a good example of ongoing goals, it's always an ongoing goal to have staffing meets the needs of what you're looking for, and that you can't, and will never be done saying, we'll never have to hire another person. There's always things to work on. So that's in phase 3. We hope to have that done at our in the admin retreat in August. We'll then come back and try to clean everything up in October, share a draft with the board in November, ask for approval then in December, and then get after it in January or before. I mean, there are things that we're always working on. We don't stop in December because we're not done with a plan, or when this one expires, it doesn't mean that we all punch out. So that kind of summarizes where we are. I know if you've not been through this before, I want to share it with you, and most of you have. I think Tori is no, but you've seen the survey.
Oh, yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And you understand, so now you see kind of the process and going from there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Any questions, discussion?
It's good process. I know a couple of years ago, or maybe 1 or 2 strategic plans ago, you need to shift focus groups before the survey, because that defines the survey. Obviously, you've been happy with that approach.
Yeah, I think I made that shift when I came here, and Nick did it the other way.
Yeah.
And it was just a different view of it. Mine was, I don't want to pigeonhole the survey to get mass responses, and then say what else is out there where we can find out, are there other, if you have a focus group and a topic comes up that you're like, oh, I didn't think that. I want to be able to ask everybody what they think about that, or is it just a loud voice or voices in one meeting? So quite often you might have somebody that says, this is a big deal, this is a big deal, and then you survey, you get 2,000 responses, and only 3 people thought it was a big deal, and 2 of them. I mean, so it happens, but I want to make sure we can get information, but that's when we shifted.
You say that the survey this time will be very similar to the last survey?
Yeah, there'll be components we remove because either we're number one done, it doesn't come up in a focus group, so we might remove a couple of questions. We do have some additional questions with our student, surveys. If you recall, we did a My Student Voice survey last year with our students. And because, we are doing a strategic planning survey with our high school juniors and seniors, we wanna make sure that we don't over-survey the kids. So we're gonna incorporate those questions into that survey so we can get trend data, so that next year, when we go back to hopefully go back to that survey, that's the plan, we don't have to take a break, we can look at every year, those questions will be, so I think there are 6 questions. Am I remember that right? 6 or 8 questions that will be in the survey that were not there before, because they are parallel to the questions that were asked last year, and will be asked next year.
Any other questions, comments?
Then the goal would be to, in the first phase, and you'll get updates as we're going through, but the first phase of the focus groups, to have those completed, and hopefully, even at the February work session next month, I'll be able to say, here are some main topics that people were talking about that stood out. And some are things that, in all honesty, we might not address them in a strategic plan, but they might need to be addressed with communication, whether it's be an apple seed or something going on with parents. There are things that happen where, it could be a long conversation about the snow days. That's not gonna be in the strategic plan, but it could be communication. If you read Appleseed, you'll see there's a big section there about snow days. It's that time of year. People wanna know.
Next, we're gonna go to the WCET update.
Yeah. I'm just gonna.
Okay, cause they have it.
If you guys have it. Well, Andrew, I'm gonna go back to a comment you made about it will be so fun to like watch the archive video, because I would like us to go back 36 years when in 1988, the city of Granville, the city of Hudsonville, Georgetown Township, Granville Public Schools, Jenison Public Schools, and Hudsonville Public Schools decided to do this wacky, crazy thing and create WCET, which is a local cable channel. And one of the reasons behind doing that channel was because the government had kind of passed this cable bill and allowed for local communities to garner PEG funds from people's cable bills and use it for public access. And so at that time, WCET was created, and it has been in creation since, and I sit on the board for WCET, and it has been something that was handed to me back in 2018, and we've gone through a lot of interesting conversations over the last 8 years. A big one, and probably, well, 2 big major things that happened that bring me to what I'm gonna present today, is in 2019, Georgetown Township decided to exit themselves, so that some of you might remember, which had some major implications to the budget. And so because of that, Jenison Public has not had a seat at the board because Georgetown Township doesn't participate. And then the second thing was that, I'm drawing a blank on what the national chair is called, but anyway, the federal government basically said PEG fees, and they really came down hard and started auditing that can only be used for operational costs, and nothing that dealt with salaries. Or I shouldn't say that. I said that wrong. It can't be used for operational costs with salaries. It can only be used for equipment. And so that has been a very interesting. And right before shutdown, we as a board decided to go through this really deep dive into WCET and how we could possibly use and garner more funds. And Alan sat on that board, Patrick Waterman sat on that board, the Granville City manager sat on the board that has since retired. So all these people have that were really like main people have no longer exist. So anyway, so this is where we're at. So as some of you might know, but WCET, like I said, was founded in 1988. Some of the programming history, basically they did a lot of community events, parades, city council meetings. I think for the schools, athletics, concerts, holiday performances, graduations were a big piece. And then for also community, you saw a lot of churches use WCET to broadcast their weekly sermons. Hot Tracks, which I found out about, was also kind of reminded me of Wayne's World. But I heard that you were a big fan of Hot Tracks from your wife told me that, and so I'm very excited.
There you go.
I'm actually disappointed. I co-hosted a show on here called In the Zone.
Oh, that's not on
I was
here.
a
What
guest
was I
host.
thinking?
Volunteer at CET back in the day.
Yeah.
Was it, the show wasn't renewed?
That's why shut her down.
One of the things that really stands out for Hudsonville Public Schools, though, is that the station itself is located in our high school. And I will say that has been another key change with public safety and school safety rules. You know, this was a true public access, you know, where people had shows and they would come in and out of the buildings and things like that, and that has been more difficult during the day, you know, with school safety and knowing who's in your building and all that kind of thing. And then the other thing is we are also the fiduciary agent of WCET. And so I feel like we, as a public school, we have our hands, pretty deep into it. But the current reality, you guys, is that it has a very outdated structure. I wrote down that evolution of media production, and I think more importantly consumption, has really made WCET kind of start to go by the way. So I'm going to give you a multiple choice test. Are you guys ready? In what year, 2010, 2020, or 2025, did WCET switch from analog to digital? You're correct.
Wow.
And let me tell you,
Blockbuster.
and this was very telling to the board, when we tried to switch it to digital, it was off air for 9 months in Granville City, Hudsonville City, Hudsonville Public, and Granville Public never heard one word about it.
No.
Not a word.
Nobody asks.
Nobody asks. And I think one of the biggest things you have to realize in 2020 when COVID went through, I mean, look here, I mean, very cost effective. We have little cameras that then can broadcast out and we utilize YouTube.
Churches
So-
have their YouTube stations.
Mhm. Churches, that's what they did. MHSAA all of a sudden was like, yeah, we can do it.
Yes.
Huddle, which
Yes.
is something for that, a lot of sports
Yes.
teams use, they put it out. So there was just so many things, and that's why I thought Andrew, when he made that comment about like, oh, I'd like to archive this, well, here we are, 36 years later, and we're talking about, cable television. The other thing is that we checked with our media lawyers, and we really aren't allowed to use, so we went through a big planning thing of, oh, let's change it to YouTube, no problem, we can do this, but you cannot use the PAYG funds as it's written by law. Like, YouTube wasn't even a thought process, the internet wasn't, in 1988 to where it is today. And so I think, we really are going against the law if we continue to do anything that would really change our media production and consumption over into social media, and obviously YouTube and those sources. So we've decided as a board kind of to redirect our resources and sunset WCET. We had the station manager that we had hired after Alan retire in July, and we just think it's a really good time to do that so that no staff is really affected. And similar. They have great AV program and some great things that they're doing and continue to do. And I just really want to voice that the city of Hudsonville and Hudsonville Public Schools still do want to have a relationship and, and work together to produce like great things that are happening in the community. And I know the city of Granville and Granville Public Schools feel the same way. There's no like hard feelings whatsoever. The way the charter was originally written, it is through the superintendents. We do have our, we have to write up a kind of a dissolution. Is that the right word? Am I saying that right?
Plan of dissolution.
Yeah, and so we are working on that. As of right now, I believe it is the superintendent that signs it. If something changes, obviously I will bring that to the board, but I just wanted to give you all an update because I know Tyler's gonna be doing it with the city of, the city of Hudsonville, and Griffin's gonna be doing it with the city of Granville, and Scott Merkel is gonna be doing this with his board with Granville too, and so I just wanted to make you all aware, and then answer any questions that you might have, but I think it was a great run, and it was great for the community, and I know that in the next evolution of whatever we do, we're gonna have great things as well out to the community.
Now we know why the superintendent of Granville announced his retirement.
Yes, this was it. He was like, no more WCUT, forget it.
So actually, the attorney I worked for was on Jenison School Board, and he was the one who actually helped incorporate and create WCET.
Oh.
So, yes.
That's cool.
And I am old enough to go back in that history. With the office that did that. So, yes.
I'm just glad they waited till after I graduated from high school. Graduated in '88, so I'm like, they didn't start it, but
You would just start all over. Yeah, I know, it's really interesting, because I had to call Jenison and explain to them that they're gonna start getting some documentation, and they're like, we're not part of that anymore. I'm like, well, on paper you are.
You are.
You get any money out of them? Back pay before we close it down? Nope. So Jensen.
Yeah, we're gonna charge them.
Okay, well.
Thanks for your work on that.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's one of the hardest things is getting something.
Right.
Yes,
So,
yes, and
thank
we had a
you.
lot of
So,
conversations about that.
Probably are some tapes that I'd like to get my hands
Ooh.
on.
Oh, you know what, no,
So
wait,
now-
I'm glad that
Oh, I know.
I'm glad that you said that, because this has baffled us. So we have a lot of DVDs and a lot of VHSs, and we've been trying to figure out any places to store it. And we talked to Grand Rapids Public Library, and there are local libraries, and we talked about, digitalizing it all. $100,000, for the amount that we have, which we're not going to. So I think between Scott at Granville and us here, we're like, we can find some places. We'll just buy some waterproof bins and throw them in there. But that has been, out of all of this, the biggest shocker of trying to get people to archive it for us. So we will be archiving it summer. So you know what?
It's a summer job for you.
Yeah.
Very disappointed to know how little people care.
I just
Give it
think
away.
everything's like, what people want is already probably in the cloud. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow, well, thanks for the update.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, before we get too emotional, let's go on to the bond discussion.
All right, so I put a packet together for the board to review. We have Adams here with OEK.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. So, to give you some context, for the past better part of a year, we've been meeting on a regular basis, and I've given the board some updates regarding the meetings. If you read those updates that are important, I'm totally kidding. I'm just.
You missed one
So,
link.
I did, to that defense, I did look at, it's hard to see the link. It's light blue.
Oh,
and
it's
it's
like click here, probably.
It's there.
Yeah.
but
It's bright
just-
blue underlined.
I had to do one of these, so it's, I'll do better. We'll make it red.
Yeah, there you go, make it bold, because when you're
Bold and
looking at
red.
it on your phone, it really is tiny.
It does. But we've been meeting for the better part of a year, talking about what could be the scope of, if we had continued work. We're just finishing up the 2019 bond. We've talked about refinancing of bonds in the past, and we're finishing up a lot of the work that we've done in 2019. There's some odds and ends that we'll be continuing to finish up over the next year or two or more. You have so many years to spend the money. And there's some bond dollars still available, not enough to do some major projects, but to finish up some things that were in the scope of the original bond. So if we were to continue to do some work, what would it look like? And a lot of that starts with getting feedback from your community. What are they thinking? Where are we with things? And so we had a series of focus groups that we brought people in and just randomly talked about if we were to do anything, what would that look like? And that took some time. And then, as you know, we had a survey that we sent out. We got a lot of feedback from our constituents, both with kids, without kids. Some that were getting ready to leave, their kids were getting ready to leave, and what would that look like? And so now it's to the point of the board want to put something on the ballot in November. If you look at the presentation, the very first slide that you have in front of you talks about the scope. So tonight I'm going to talk about possible projects, which could take a little bit of time. Then really we need to finalize the scope of what the board feels. There could be some fine tuning, just so you know, we don't have to have ballot language done in a month. But tonight I'm not asking for you to make decisions on what do you think we should put on this bond. I'm going to give you some suggestions, talk about the scope, what this looks like. We are gonna ask for board action after spring break. If we were to do something in November, if you don't feel the timing's right as a board, then we have more time. But this is a fairly aggressive timeline, but we've also been working on this for quite a while. We do have a date with the Department of Treasury at 10 a.m., I think it is, on the 27th of May. We wanna get on their calendar. You gotta be about 5 months before the ballot. That's kind of about that timeline. So we did put that on. We are signed up for that date already in time. There are two main board approvals. There is the preliminary qualification, which is the PQ app, that in June the board will take action on. And then the board does call the vote on the 23rd with approval of the ballot language and going from there. If this is something we would put on the agenda, or on the ballot for November 3rd. So that's the timeline. It's repeated at the end of the slide deck too, so you can go through. So I would like to run through each one of these next slides. I talked a little bit about the community information we received, give you a good indication of, I think we had a very broad group of participants that reached out, that gave us some feedback, a lot of open-ended comments, which we also then summarized. The board you have that information at our last meeting. So you can go through and look at some of the data a little closer. All of the data that we have, we can still dive into more. So if you have questions after tonight, you're like, I really have a question about this group over here, what are they saying? I'm gonna give you some 30,000 foot view, but you're like, I wanna dig deeper. I wanna know what are they saying on, I'm gonna say the Jamestown area about X, Y, and Z. What are they saying in the Georgetown area about Jamestown? And a lot of it has to do with the 5-6 building, but I'll get to that point in a minute.
Did everybody get a chance to look through those questions and stuff?
Yeah. Good. So then, what I tried to do is put these projects into what I'm calling buckets right now, because I remember the Bozo show and I just remember the ping pong balls, and I know I'm dating myself too, but I was just thinking these are kind of the groups that we had put them in and talked about. It is easy to look at every single project and try to prioritize, but I think it becomes challenging when I'm gonna say 7 board members. If I asked you to take all 15 projects and say, okay, you're all gonna be different, and I don't think that's a great way to. So I try to put them in buckets, and I'll explain a little bit more when we get to the graphic of the buckets, why I put them in buckets like that. So the first bucket was really the early childhood and the CTE facility. So that was taking, we had talked about taking the early childhood and building an early childhood center on the North or Baldwin campus and one on the South or Jamestown campus, so that our families in the North and South would have access closer to those facilities. From a transportation standpoint, maybe from a daycare standpoint, it could really increase some of the younger learners' attendance at some of those facilities. And if that's the case, then we do something with the current early childhood center, which I think has some value as a structure in Hudsonville, right? There's some history to that building. Not that it's a historical building, but it's still a building that I think has significance in our district, not to just put a parking lot there or something like that. To do that, each building is roughly about, we have the cost in there for each building, and then the CTE building. So you can see the general cost of those projects, with everything incorporated, and that's where, Adam works with OAK and does the estimating for all of these projects. So we talk a lot about escalation of costs. We talk about if we do this in multiple series, what does this look like if we do it, if it's at the end of the bond versus the beginning, and then with the escalation, and all of those different components. Being well aware that Adam has not lifted every ceiling tile at the early childhood center to find out is there some wire that they didn't know was there, and how's that impact? We saw a lot of that at Park Elementary. When they start gutting the middle, they're like, whoa, and it altered some of those things.
Well, to that point, so Adam, what are you seeing? Because company build projects and stuff that I'm involved in. So what are you seeing in terms of escalation of build costs, material costs? Because I bet it's different now than it was last time. So I'm not asking you to go through detail of everything, just I'm asking for general, OAK's general perspective of, holy crap, I mean, material costs are really going up faster than we would expect.
Yeah, so typically, at this time, we're seeing somewhere between 3.5% and 4.5% per year. Per annual. So, it has changed dramatically since the last bond. We had kind of an inflation environment in 2021 where construction costs are roughly 45 to 50% higher than they were pre-COVID. They've leveled out over the last couple of years, but they're still rising kind of on par with the national average at what we call 3.5 to 4.5%. So startling, but yes.
Yeah, that's a steep decline. Okay.
Steel skyrocketed at one point, wood has come down, I mean, we just don't build schools with wood, I mean, there's just.
Oh, yeah, right. Material and labor.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So that's a summary of that bucket, and I'm gonna explain why that bucket, right, is right around 65 million for that, all of that work. Now, that does include a lot of site work at both early childhood centers, it's a whole renovation of the early childhood center, which I'm gonna address in a different bucket in a minute, but that's part of that bucket. Okay, bucket number 2 is upper elementary capacity on the south end of the district. We've incorporated the 5-6 building on the north end, which impacted the elementaries on the north end. This would be doing something similar on the south end, putting a 5-6 building up and then reconfiguring our buildings to K4 buildings, and then having the 5-6, 5th and 6th graders go to the building, 5-6 building on the south, and then going to Riley Middle School for 7th and 8th. Give you context, the 5-6 building, when we put it up before, was right around 39 million. And you can see the cost now for doing the same building is about 67 million, right? So it's just about 28 million roughly more to put the building up. Now, I will also say, this is an interesting bucket because we feel as a district, getting the consistency across the district at grade spans is very helpful from a curriculum standpoint. And I'm not talking just about what you teach, it's the transitions, we're having conversations about 5th grade math scores. So the question is, what about 5th grade math scores on the north versus the south? Well, in the north, they just transitioned, and the south, they're older kids in a building, so what does that look like? I mean, there's a lot of questions that I'm not picking on the curriculum or Amy, but I'm saying that they're trying to navigate a lot of gray area with all the different grade spans we have. You explain to people that we have K2 buildings, we have K4 buildings, we have K5 buildings, we have 3-5 buildings, we have 5-6 buildings, we have 6-7 buildings, or we have 7-8 buildings, we have 6-8 buildings, and we have a 9-12 building, right? It's a lot, right, to navigate, and it's a lot from a staffing standpoint when you have people that are moving around. So, but having said that, we put a 5-6 building on the north end of the district because we had 2 elementary schools that were over capacity with portables. We had another one that was at capacity, and we had a middle school that was over capacity. And instead of redistricting, we were able to put kids into an environment without having to shift elementary boundary lines, which is, I think, it's a positive thing for our community. But we don't have that same urgency on the south end right now. So this project, the reason why the cost is even higher when you think about, well, that's a lot from when we just did the other one, we also have, our thought process is put at the end of the phase, right? So maybe it's in the third series. This past bond, we did them in 2 series. This bond might have the capacity to do it in 3 series, so it might be every 2 to 3 years instead of, we don't have the capacity, with all the respect to how amazing OAK is and GMB as an architect, even for them to try to scope and do all of this work and having to do a certain percentage of it in the first 5 years is just not possible. It's too much work for the district, too much change. So this would be at the end of a series going from there. So that could be an idea.
So in taking Ken's question and Adam's answer, this is at the end of the series, how much would this building be if we put it today as opposed to the end of the series? That's quite a dramatic change, though. And are these dollars at the end of the series?
Yes, and that, it might be it's not gonna be 38 million. It might be closer to 59 or 60, I don't know the exact
No, that's
number.
correct.
So this isn't present value, you've taken into account.
We are taking in,
Correct.
correct. This is not going to we're not looking at this saying it's gonna be 80 by the time we're doing it. We're looking at by the time we do it, that's what we're.
That's great.
Does that make
And
sense?
I'm sure we're gonna do this, but how are we gonna communicate that to the folks out there?
Well, I don't know if, and I'm not saying you don't, I think the idea is that you come up with a scope of the bond, knowing that the financial request from our community matches the expectations of the timing of the projects.
Okay.
That might have sounded the way, I hope that sounded okay.
Yeah.
So I'll get to that one in the next bucket.
Okay.
Because I think the next bucket, is another one that we'll talk about.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the 4th bucket. So let me go to the 3rd bucket. So you saw that was 67 million. The 3rd bucket has a lot to do with athletic and site improvements. So there's a lot of projects, but I put them into one bucket because they kind of have the same narrative, the same story, the same theme. So this would include a indoor facility at our high school campus, for athletics and, fine arts, and class, to be honest with you. We've talked to, Jenison, Spring Lake, Kentwood. I'm missing one. That has an indoor facility. Jenison, Kentwood, Spring Lake.
There's White Cloud.
It might have been, there's one other one.
Yeah.
But putting it off-site, because we had looked 4 different places when we had studied this as our bond. We looked at, do we put one over at the Baldwin campus? Do we put one, at the Riley campus? Do we put it someplace on the high school campus? Or do we put it, do we enclose the current, practice field at the high school? So we have 2 different places at Baldwin, one at Riley, one at the high school. And we kept coming back to, it's gonna sit empty all day if we don't put it on site. So having it on site all of a sudden opens up a whole nother learning environment. Whatever that is, it's clearly going to be marching band, during 5th hour in the fall. Or whatever, I think marching band's 5th hour, if I'm not mistaken, but it could be used for, PE class, it could be used for other things in the morning, it's just used more, and we wanna do that. So that facility. Sitetown work on the Jamestown campus, and that's really on the Riley campus right there. So that's looking at taking the current track and field and making a synthetic, field at the Riley campus or Jamestown campus. So that can be used, all year, track, different seating, parking. One of the requests we had from constituents on the south side of the district is it'd be really nice if we had a place that we didn't have to travel all the way to soccer and softball and baseball. What if we had a lacrosse field down here? We had a soccer, those kind of things. So, doing that, so having a site down there. Improvements to softball and baseball, that would be turfing both fields like you see in most upgraded facilities now, for baseball and softball. Cleaning up the locker rooms at the high school. I don't know if I mentioned it here, but they can't fit, the kids don't fit in whenever at halftime, home or away, they just don't fit. At Baldwin Street, at the Baldwin Street campus, and that's for baseball, softball, track, football, girls field hockey, and it starts to stem into the women's flag football conversation that's really taking steam. If you've watched the national narrative, That's another reason going back to an indoor facility. It opens up that opportunity for them to practice. Not that it's gonna be a winter sport because it's Michigan still, clearly outdoors, but it opens up more facilities for kids, for girls, and when we get to play football. Stadium turf, so replacing, the stadium turf at the high school needs to be replaced, just under $1 million. That traditionally is something you do every 10 years. The current turf is 13 years old. It's lasted longer, primarily because it's only used by a couple teams. Band is not on there every day for practice, and so that's really helped that turf last longer. But it does need to be replaced. And then taking the soccer field and redoing that field, which is the only grass soccer field in the OK Red, and cleaning it up so that the girls and boys can play soccer at that facility at Baldwin. So that's bucket number 3. You can see the total cost of all of that is less than the first 2 buckets, but it's in the ballpark range. And that's important to note, the total bucket cost, and I'll show you why in a minute. Then we have bucket number 4, and this is bucket number 4 that really has a wide range of things, but it also has some things that I think are really series 1, that I think, based on feedback from our constituents, are things that need to prioritize. And the 2, I'll say that really the 3 that are really a priority, number 1 is air conditioning. So that'd be something we clearly don't need today, but we would need to really start to look at that in the first series and start to really work on the secondary building, second floor. When we first started looking at air conditioning, I think we were messing with about the $70 million.
North of 60.
Yeah, it was north of 60 million to do air condition, and we've really, they've really done a nice job looking at, GMB and OAK, looking at other ways to condition air without just having to do a chiller in every building, which is a huge undertaking. There are other ways to do that. You see that at South Elementary with the units that they have. What can they do to really condition the air? So in August and sometimes in June, but mostly August and September, kids on the second floor, and I know Mr. Anderson can attest to this, they're very lethargic when it gets very warm up in those, a little bit more than this.
Mr. DeWitt sweated in my class.
I remember.
Yeah.
Sweating.
Yeah. So air conditioning as a priority, and the other 2 really are technology and safety and security. Those are the biggest areas of people asking for, so those are areas that we would undertake initially to try to get that work done. Also have the updates and upgrades to the buildings, which gets into the furniture conversation, it gets into the playground conversation. All of that is incorporated into this bucket. It cleans up some sidewalks over by the 5-6 building, sidewalks over by Bauer Elementary. We can only control so much of our property when it comes to sidewalks, but we definitely want to be a good partner with our neighbors. When they want to put sidewalks in, we'll be more than happy to put them on our property and go from there. So you have that general idea. The one thing that is in that bucket, because it's not its own stand-up bucket, talks about the administration building. I think we, as an administrative team that work in this building, board members that are here, it is a building that we feel is not exactly the cornerstone of the district, right? It's kind of, it's
1981.
It's tired, yeah, and it needs some work. I also know it's not a priority when it comes to student classroom environment, safety and security, well-being and academics. All of those things are priority. So I put an asterisk by that, thinking number 1, do we include it or not? We don't have to. I put an asterisk because it is included in that total number, but it is definitely something that we might frame some of the language in the bond language to maybe do it if the bids come in favorable. Instead of having its own building, do we do something with the early childhood center that incorporates the administration building into that facility? If we do CTE, do we just make that from a technology central office CTE? We have to really dig into the space over there. We don't have a ton of time to do it, to be honest with you. But I think that's a big discussion for the board to have about yes and no. Do we want to do some of this? Some things that maybe are on these lists that maybe the bids don't come in as favorable as we needed to, and we have to cut some of those things. There are things that are sinking fund eligible, but there are others that are not. We can't just say, hey, we have money in our sinking fund, let's put up an admin building. It just doesn't work that way. So we have to be very cautious of the language. We've had some of those conversations as a team, preliminary conversations, but now it's really to the board to start to look at that. So that is kind of a overview of the 4 buckets. So if you look at the next slide, this gets into my attempt at the buckets, right? And the reason why I will share this with you is because if you take all of these projects and put them together, it's right around $320 million. We do not have the capacity to go to our voters and ask for them to approve a continuation of the bond rate, of our current rate, and generate $320 million. I also don't feel that these projects are all a priority. Some of them are a priority. I think there's enough here that there's enough people, if you looked at the survey results, there were enough positive vibes on every single one of them. We were hoping for 1 or 2 that was like, oh, we do not want that. We didn't get that. So we didn't have a way to say, let's get rid of a project, a major project or 2. However, we do feel we have enough capacity to get probably around maybe 300 or 240, 250 maybe, capacity without raising the rate to do 3 of these buckets. And I say 3 of them, I think the 4th bucket is a priority based on the survey results, everything except for what I asterisked there on the admin building. I think everything on that list came across as, and I'm not gonna say it's odds and ends, but they weren't major projects, but it's central air conditioning is all a lot to be done, and they're impacting every kid. You're looking at furniture upgrade across the district, impacting every classroom, every kid. You're looking at playground enhancements across the district. That's impacting every elementary kid, every family, every community member that likes to use the playground on a Sunday afternoon. So there's a lot of positives in that bucket number 4. The question is about bucket number 1, 2, and 3. I will say this, in the green bucket, on the very bottom, it says Jamestown Turf, it should be Baldwin. So I just wanted to clarify that. The Jamestown Turf technically is in the site work at Jamestown, which is like the 2nd bullet. The bottom should have said Baldwin Turf, which is the soccer field.
I was somewhat surprised that this is the first time in all the surveys I've seen in the last how many years, that there definitely was a little bit of a trend that we're tired of putting money into sports facilities. And that's the first time that I've seen it dip in my history here. So there is a component of that where when I look at some of these other things, how do you talk about that enough for those people who are very adamant that that's necessary, but from the big picture perspective of the district that says, yeah, we want great facilities and we have great sports programs, but are these things more important? And I don't know how you address that with the numbers you use. And the admin building thing, part of me says that just has to be done. That is like one of those things to me that you don't really say, oh, well, the community's not real sure. Well, how often does the community come here other than board meetings? And then you have to go to the fine arts facility, or you have to go elsewhere if you have more than 50 people show up. So I guess I feel pretty strongly that has to be part of our next bond. However we phrase it, however we do it, I just think it has to be part of our next bond project. And I would rather see that happen